If you care deeply about mental health and wellbeing in your local community and you really want to make a difference, and maybe you've been trying to work out how to create change that actually lasts and has real impact for your local community, then this video is absolutely for you. Because a lot of people step into this work with really good intentions, but without realizing it, make a few common mistakes that really leave them stuck, burnt out, or trying to create change in ways that really just aren't sustainable or easy to fund. So in this video, I want to walk you through three of the biggest mistakes that people make when trying to improve mental health in their community, and what you can do instead if you want to create more meaningful community-driven change. Now, if we haven't met before, I'm Renee, and I help passionate people living and working in rural areas create community-driven wellbeing solutions that are locally led and actually work in the local context. Now, you might be someone who really cares deeply about mental health and wellbeing. And you quite likely are frustrated by the gaps that currently exist, by solutions that are missing the mark, and you've been left trying to work out why so many people are burning out with good intentions and why so many initiatives just aren't really having the impact that you might have hoped for. So, why do so many of these well-intentioned mental health initiatives and programs seem promising at first, but struggle to create lasting change or attract ongoing funding? And why is it that people are burning out in their individual sectors and roles trying to make a difference? And why are communities so often stuck, particularly rural communities, with generic solutions built for the masses, not designed to adapt to the local context? Now, a lot of the time, it comes back to a few very common mistakes in how we think about change. So let's dive in and unpack what those mistakes are. So the first mistake that I see is trying to improve mental health and wellbeing from inside one sector, inside one service or one organisation or group that are really trying to do it all on their own. Now, so many of us are working in schools, in the health system, in law enforcement, in local government, workplaces, community groups, sporting groups, the list goes on and on. And we're working really hard trying to improve outcomes. I really just want to say it's not for a lack of trying on anyone's behalf, because I think people are trying probably harder than ever. They're trying to do prevention, they're trying to do intervention, raise awareness, trying to offer support, trying to do everything, everything that's involved, and really burning out in the process. And I think that's very much where things start to unravel, because mental health and well-being don't just sit inside one part of our life. They affect every part of our lives, and every aspect of our life has an impact on our mental health and well-being. Our well-being is really shaped by the whole environment that we live in, by the connections that we have, by our sense of belonging, the support that we're able to access, the culture of the community that we live within, the relationships that are around us, the purpose that we internally feel, and really how welcome and accepted we feel in the environment that we live in, and so much more. I could go on for ages. But when one sector or one organisation is left holding all of the responsibility for improving well-being, burnout just about becomes inevitable. Now, I know this firsthand from my own experience in education over the decades that I worked in education. As a deputy principal, I was responsible for student mental health and wellbeing and behaviour, and of course, education. Now, like so many educators, I was left constantly trying to piece together all of the parts of the puzzle for my students, because very often the right supports weren't available locally. There certainly was no intentional discussions at the time across health and education and police about those same young people we were regularly engaging with. Now, obviously, as an educator, I did talk to our school psych, but beyond that education system, there was no intentional conversations going on, no shared discussions about the issues that we were all seeing. And regularly, those issues were the same. No intentional discussions or conversations with sporting clubs or community groups about the ripple effects that were happening beyond the school gate. So we were constantly left trying to figure it out on our own. Now, that's the same across all of the other sectors and all of the other community organisations too. You know, sporting groups are trying to fill gaps that they can see as they work with people. Workplaces are trying to respond to issues that they were never really designed for as a workplace. Community groups are regularly trying to hold aspects of the community together with limited support that they can access. And no one has the time to stop within their space and create this intentional collaboration because too many people are working in isolation around what should actually be shared problems and shared responsibility. The shift really happens when you stop asking which organisation should be fixing this and instead you start asking who else should be part of this conversation. Who else should be sitting at this table and really talking about what's going on? And how can we create a shared responsibility for well-being across our community? Because when people work together intentionally, instead of just incidentally, everything changes because each group and each individual can bring strengths to the table. The pressure that every sector and organisation and group is feeling can be shared. The gaps become easier to spot and the solutions become much more impactful and much more sustainable. All right, the second big mistake. The second big mistake I see is waiting for someone outside the community to come in and fix the problem. Now, that outside body might be government, it might be a funded program, it might be an outside organisation, it might just be the hope that eventually someone else will come with the answer. Now, I want to be really clear about this. Programs can be so valuable and so amazing. Funding definitely matters, and outside support is really important. Professional support matters and is critical, but none of them are the whole answer. And they're not designed necessarily, um, certainly when they're generic, to uniquely fit the struggles that your local community face, the things that are holding these generic solutions back from actually working. They're often really, really well intentioned. And I say that a few times, but I really want to emphasize that it's not from a lack of wanting to make a difference, but they regularly miss the lived reality of the community that they're trying to support. They miss the local barriers, the local strengths that exist, the local relationships that are already present, and the history in the local environment and everyday realities that shape whether something will actually work. And all of that matters considerably because no two communities are the same. What works in one place will not automatically work in another. And that can be from 30 kilometres away. Even when a program is amazing and excellent, and trust me, there are so many, if the program sits off to the side on its own without local ownership, without relationships embedded around it and a bigger plan for where that can sit in the entire solution, then that program often creates only temporary impact. It comes in, it runs, might be really fantastic, but then it finishes. And then the community is left asking, now what? Do we have to start this whole process all over again? And this is why I believe so strongly in locally led, community driven solutions. Not because communities should have to do everything, but because real change happens when local people come together and shape the solutions and build the solutions and connect with strengths that already exist within that area. That's when you stop waiting. It's when you start taking ownership and when you start building something from the ground up that can become part of the community culture. And honestly, that shift is huge. Now, I know you might be looking around and thinking there has to be a better way than what's currently going on in your own community. And I just want to tell you there absolutely is. But it very regularly starts when people inside the community, like you, decide not to just keep waiting for change to arrive and instead start wanting to create change from the ground up. All right, the third mistake. The third mistake is thinking that improving mental health outcomes is only about services. Now, again, services matter and they are absolutely critical and essential, and we need them so very much. But if that becomes the only lens that we look through, we miss a huge part of what actually shapes our well-being as humans, because well-being is also built in the everyday experience of community life. It's built in where the people feel connected to one another, whether they feel like they belong, whether there are safe places to gather, whether they themselves feel valued and accepted in the place that they live, whether there are opportunities for them to contribute, whether even individual demographics feel seen and heard and valued, and whether people feel welcome, included, and supported way before things ever reach the crisis point. If we only focus our intentions on crisis services, then we very much stay stuck in reactive mode. And yes, crisis response matters deeply, but if you care about long-term change, then prevention has to matter as well. Belonging has to matter. Awareness has to matter. Protective factors have to matter. Because sometimes the most powerful well-being work is not necessarily the most obvious. It might be a community group that creates genuine connection. It might be a sports club that helps people feel for the first time that they belong. It might be a local event that brings people together and something that's been missing in the local community and brings back that village feel. It might be a space where someone realizes for the first time that they're not alone in their struggles. It might be a cultural shift that helps people have the courage to speak up sooner or know how to support a loved one or someone else with the struggles that they're going through. Or it might just be a stronger sense of shared responsibility around well-being. All of these things matter. Because mental health is not only about what happens once somebody is already in crisis, it's also about the kind of community that they're trying to live in every single day. So if you're listening to this, I want you to just take a moment to reflect and think about your own community. What's one thing that your community already has that might be helping to create connection or belonging or well-being? Or what's one gap or one solution that just keeps missing the mark that you can just see really clearly, and it might infuriate you and it might just seem so obvious to you that we need to start paying attention to. And whatever that one thing is, I'd love for you to share it in the comments, because sometimes putting into words what's already there and what's around us and what might still be missing can just be the start of a much bigger shift and a recognition in you and a way to move forward. Now, if this way of thinking really resonates with you and you care deeply and you can see the gaps and you just know that there has to be a better way than siloed short-term solutions, then I'd love to invite you to grab my free Community Wellbeing Changemaker Guide. It's a great next step If you want to move from feeling frustrated and guessing how to make change happen into having a much clearer understanding and a community-driven approach that you can utilize to really create local momentum. So I've linked it in the description below if that's something that you would like to grab. And look, if this video has been helpful, please make sure you like and subscribe, because this is the sort of stuff that I talk about all the time, and I want to give you as much information as I can so that we can start making a difference across our communities. The truth is, most communities are not lacking care or people that want to make a difference like yourself. They're lacking shared ownership and responsibility for well-being, and they're lacking connection between people and organisations that care. And they're lacking long-term sustainable approaches that can make a difference. Your community, no doubt, already has strengths. You of who is one of them, no doubt, and already people who care, and many of those pieces the puzzle that I've been talking about. The opportunity is in learning how to bring all those pieces together in a way that actually works. Thank you for being here. Until next time, let's stop watching the mental health statistics and let's start changing them. I'll see you soon.